In this episode, you will see the real evil that UI has to face. It will be incredibly powerful, and we'll find out if the boy can handle it right now. Everyone was shocked that there was someone stronger than UI. Stronger, you could say, the only cheater in the world. Or maybe he's not the only one after all. Earlier, the knights captured a prince who betrayed his kingdom. Since Yuya has been very supportive of the prince in apprehending him, he was invited to participate in this council. Of course, the boy agreed to participate in such an important matter. Lexia was upset by this event. No wonder, he was her own brother after all. All this time he'd been wearing a mask on his face to hide his identity, which the guards eventually removed. There were a lot of scars on his body. The family was shocked by what they saw. But what shocked them even more was the truth. The prince told them that all these marks, all these ugly scars on his body were left by his own sister when she was practicing magic and couldn't contain her powers. While she accidentally touched her brother and left these marks on him, her father tried to stand up for his daughter, saying that those wounds had long since healed. He was overcome by a wave of madness the moment Lexia's magic hit him. To keep from harming those around him, he channeled the enormous power of destruction on himself. His father knew of his suffering but did not help his son. He wanted his sister dead to avenge his own father's abuse. An ugly and crazy prince who was banished from the palace. This is the status that haunted him all his life. He hated everyone around him, including himself. In the years he'd lived behind the castle walls, he'd experienced things no one else had ever dreamed of. All of this history resonated a bit in UI's heart. In a way, he even understood the prince. After all, he used to be the same kind of outcast, doomed to be hated. Having experienced such a thing, the prince no longer feared death, he craved it. After hearing the council had to make a final decision on what to do with the prince, Yuya decided to speak up, to which the king reacted rather negatively. But the boy offered to help him. He opened his inventory and took out a glass jar with some kind of potion. He walked closer to the prince and asked him to be patient for a bit. Afterward, he poured the liquid over the prince's body. Immediately, magically before everyone's eyes, all the ugly scars on his body were vaporized. Everyone in the room was still reeling from what they had seen. Even in the magical world, no one had ever practiced such a thing. It just so happens that this particular plant from which the potion was made is very hard to find. Many people have heard of it, but they doubted its existence. The king was astonished by such an act. For the sake of his son, Yui sacrificed a potion made from such a rare plant. Turns out that wasn't a problem for the guy, because in his vegetable garden, it grows like a weed. During all these discussions, night has already fallen. But even if the prince's wounds were healed, his actions still warranted punishment for his assassination attempt. Then his sister asked the king exactly what her brother was accused of. The accusation was that he had attempted to kill the princess. At this point, the princess revealed that she forgives her brother. The princess was sure that all these motives were in the past. Now that all the problems had been resolved, she was no longer in danger. She also tried to get her father to forgive his own son for his assassination attempt. It wasn't out of malice after all, but out of a rage that had only momentarily seized the prince. If they both forgave the prince, there would be nothing to judge him for. And it was only because of his great love for his daughter that the king agreed to her terms and forgave the prince for his terrible actions. Because of everything that had happened before, so many years missed, so many opportunities to spend time with his family. So now that things were back on track, Lexia would be eager to get to know her brother better and spend as much time with him as possible. The prince thanked his savior. Afterward, it was decided to reward UI for such a noble deed. Lexia, of course, nominated herself as a gift. She would have loved to marry the boy, but she was stopped in time. Luna stopped her in time. Since she was protecting the princess, she could marry her instead. But UI refused such a gift. From all this, the girls once again had a small argument. While everyone was fussing, the king and the prince came up with a better idea. And then the king came up with a solution. In gratitude, UI would be given all the properties and estates previously owned by the prince. Also, in return for his help in catching criminals, he was given the title of Lord Knight. The boy was amazed at such a generous reward. Since it was late, UI was left behind to spend the night at the palace. UI was no longer just a traveler, but an aristocrat with his own estates and possessions. After such a full day, the boy fell into a deep sleep. The dream, by the way, was very strange. He dreamed of a battle, very dangerous and severe. He was somewhere in the dark and hundreds of foreign bodies were flying at him, and then he woke up abruptly. His breathing was ragged and his heart was pounding frantically, and cold sweat beaded on his face. It was a nightmare. He looked out the window and hundreds of bright stars scattered across the night sky. The next morning, he returned to the ordinary world and went to school. All the lessons had already finished, so he had to go home. All his thoughts were on the girl who had attacked them when they were detaining the prince. All they know about her is that she's very strong, sneaky, and bossy. She's also clearly got ulterior motives for the whole magical world. When Yui ran home, he immediately immersed himself in the virtual world. He had been practicing and realized that he couldn't fight the evil forces alone. Suddenly, the pets felt something wrong. A second later, a projectile fell from the sky, causing an explosion. Yui bounced off just in time. It was the same girl. She saw the guy as a potential threat to her revenge plan. That's why she had to exterminate him. Kaori, as usual, came to Yui's house to study for her exams. After ringing the bell several times and not finding the boyfriend at home, she entered the virtual world. Through her ears came the sounds of a fight between Yui and that girl. That girl was very strong and attacked the guy with hatred. He was only able to dodge and fend off her magic arrows. Her projectiles were deadly, so he had to be very careful. Kaori's desire to help only served as a distraction. Now he had to think not only about himself and his pets, but also about his classmate. Just when he thought it was all over, he was saved by the hair teacher. It turns out this girl's name is Yuchi. She's the successor to the slain sacred archer. Since her mentor was killed, she now wants to avenge her mentor on everyone. It turns out that her mentor protected the people from the forces of evil, but one day, the people turned against her and destroyed her. It is Yuchi's purpose to take revenge on all of humanity. Dialogues won't help here, so a fight is formed between them again. Yui managed to destroy her arrows when the pets attacked her and distracted her. The hare was as sacred as her mentor, so it was his duty to protect the humans. The girl was seized by an incredible rage. She had taken the power of evil into her soul and now became an evil deity. The boar ran to help the hare. He recreated the shield he used to protect his friends. This shield disarmed Yuchi, so the friends managed to stop her, if only temporarily. Thanks to the boar, Yuchi would no longer be able to use the forces of evil. So the hare galloped away and left the girl to the boy. Now let him decide what to do with her. Finally, Kaori came out from behind cover. If the boy hadn't reacted quickly, she'd have been eaten by the monster coming up behind her.